program in some way. I mean, you must have played some integral role with John Wood starting it up. And of course, Frank, that we're all here tonight. So when I was thinking about what to say quickly, because we have a big night ahead, the word audacity kept coming to me. And this is McNeese University still now, all right? It's a regional school. It's a small school. In the 80s, I can't even imagine the audacity of John Wood and the others that started the program to because most people think of, like, they go to a school, if it doesn't have what they want, they get a job somewhere else. And I'm sure everyone could have gotten a job somewhere else there. But the audacity to start a program here at this small regional school, right? That took some guts. I mean, it probably would have been much easier just to get another job somewhere and teach another program, right? And that it's just incredible to me to think the energy and the fighting that must have gone on to get this program to happen, right? And so there's audacity of the faculty to actually start this thing and make it happen. That it just blows me away to think of it, because it is a constant battle. It continues to be a constant battle. But knowing it was probably nothing like starting the program. And so I also like to, just say, because I feel still we're in a world where we have to defend our art and our place in the university, and where everything, again, the university is here to help better lives, right? This is we all, like most of you here have taught English 101 or 102 at some point, and we're here to change those lives. But I don't think anyone quite understands how much, the people that were brought in with students that came to the program, right? The variety and diversity of students that came here. And how that enriched the Lake Charles. Many people stay on. So a lot of people move here that come from afar, and it's this week. I was thinking of things about the solar eclipse this week, and then tornadoes, and I just like, well, I'm not gonna go there. It's too painful. The solar eclipse, that's a good thing, and just this audacity to have this program. And it's just so exciting. But then I was thinking, you know what? Another thing that takes audacity is to be the first group of students to go in the program. We still have trouble getting students to come here, all right? Because it's Lake Charles, it's a small school, we don't pay very much. But here's the audacity of, we have, I think, 3, 4, John, were you early on too? So we have 4 people that were part of the program early on here, right? And the audacity to actually believe that this could work. And I think most of you are regional. I should have done my research before the speech, but most of you are from here, right? Or not? No, you're all no. Again, I didn't do my research. So, but again, just the audacity to start here and pick up your life and do something at McNeese and make that happen. And I also, we have lots of students right now, current MFA students and alumni, and it is an audacious thing to do, to come here to Lake Charles, to McNeese. I believe it's probably one of the best places that you can come to school, right? And I'm not just saying that because some of the students that are coming in the fall are watching us from all afar. But I do believe, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this program, right? Yeah. Amy and Neil would not be here if it wasn't for this program, right? And this program is there's a magnetism to it, you know, as Neil always tells the story of driving out of Louisiana, done, throwing the map out the window as soon as you cross the Louisiana border, and I'm done. Right. And a few years later, here he was back gracing our presence. Right? I'm not sure if Amy was as dramatic in her leaving of Louisiana, but you know, so I just think, you know, it's just, I'm gonna slow down and stop here, but just to sort of honor that audacity, and that's what art takes, okay, and I also think you can do, you know, you can plant this wonderful thing, and that all of us have tried to keep growing it and keeping it alive, and but without that first audacious seed, we wouldn't be here, and so I know this is not about Frank so much, but it is this program that allowed all these students to come in and Frank to come in and give us this wonderful thing, and Frank kept that seed going as well by funding this wonderful, you know, poetry reading program that has brought the best poets from around the world here to read, which again just keeps, you know, growing and helping our students and enriching the lives of the community. And so I'm gonna just, you know, I was stuck with a cake, you'll see, and I wrote thanks Frank. I'm going with it. It's a rough draft, but I gotta, they were looking at me pretty hard at the cake place. Like, what are you gonna say? What's it gonna say? I need a couple hours, okay? Can I come back tomorrow and revise? But I had to stick with it. So, but really, it is. I mean, as much for our hearts and the crowd here. Just, you know, thanks for everything that you've done to this program. And all this, I brought your thesis, but it didn't make it into this room, just to see it. But I'll have it. I think it's in my backpack in the car. So if you want to see it again, you can leave it. You can. You know, I actually read through it, and I don't think that's something that you'd want to leave. So, but we'll fight about that later. And so a couple other things to move on, because we're going to be saying. So just to sort of give you an idea of the night. We're going to give some awards to our current students, okay, and to honor some of the things that they're doing now. Dean Fontenot, one of the first students that graduated with Frank, is going to say a few words. I'm going to come back, introduce Neil, and Neil's going to do a little Neil's going to introduce Amy, and then Frank is going to close us out, okay? And then we got some food after that, okay? So the first are the awards. I'm just for the speed, I'm just going to have you stand up if you won, okay? That's something. So the first award is the Robert Owen Butler Award. It's a $500 award, and it's still judged by Robert Owen Butler. We send him the manuscripts, and he sends us the results back. And the winner this time is Malin Wood. The John Wood Prize for poetry. That was fiction too. I should have said. It gets probably clear with Robert Owen Butler, but it's all right. And the Poetry Prize, named after John Wood, established with John Wood, is also $500. It's judged by the Wood family, and the winner of that is Andrew Perzo. There's another award for poetry. Sorry, fiction people. The poetry, you know, they're rich in spirit, but often poor in pocket. So they need a little bit more. Okay, they need a little bit. But this one, and I'm not, is Joy in your time period or is she later? Joy Scalaberry. Yeah, so this prize, Joy, from what I've known in the past, she left us too soon. And her family established this prize. So I'd like to, think about her for a second. And then this year it was judged by the poet Elizabeth Huey. Got that right? And so remember to write that down on your thing. So this one actually has 3 prizes. And it's $100, $75, and $50. All right. I'm just going to go right to the first. All right. So, Mayank, Manachada. Second was Gwyneth Wheat. And third was Andrew Perzo. Right. And again, thank you all for your audacity. All right, so Dean's going to start us off with some thoughts.
Okay.
I think the mic is okay.
Yeah, sure, it's fine. Okay, I'm Deanie Fontenot, and I noticed that when the first announcement came out, there was the old newspaper clipping. Frank sitting there in front of a car with a drink in his hand. So Mr. Cool was always Mr. Cool. I was telling Corliss that I was trying to come up with something embarrassing, funny, terrible to tell about Frank. Yeah. Damn it, I can't. I'm sure Pam can, but I can't. I don't remember anything, but as Corliss pointed out, we were pretty good people. We did have a lot of parties at my house. My husband and I had just built a house, and we designed it for entertaining. So when we had writers and poets and visitors in, Joe Cash would ask me would you give the party? I said, sure, if you'll provide the booze, I'll give the party. Frank's contribution to this program, for those of you who do not know or do not comprehend how valuable it is, because to keep a program going, it depends on people like Frank who are going to realize that what he got from this program, he needs to pass on to others. And that's what he continues to do. So I hope all of, especially you students who are here now, please make the effort to come up and thank him, because he's helped keep this program going for a very, very long time. And I know that Keegan and Mike and Neil and everybody else will attest to that. When they started the program, it wasn't an easy task, as Carol can tell you. She probably doesn't want to tell you all the details, but there were a lot of people that helped a wonderful man who had a fantastic vision for this program. First, it was Joe Cash, who was chair of the department. And I know most of you don't remember Joe or knew Joe, but a lot of you did. And he was right there in step with John the entire way. And it was not an easy task. It's a very, as all you know, it's a very difficult task to get a program started in academia. It doesn't just happen. It's work, work, work. And I think it took, what, 2 years?
Yeah.
At least 2 years before it happened. So Joe was there. Richie Novak was the dean at the time. So it went from Joe and John, take it to Richie, which is where it has to go. Has to go to the vice president of academic affairs, which was Richard Reed at the time. And
Miller Jones.
no, Miller wasn't dean. He wasn't dean yet. Richie was dean. Yeah. Bob Baker was vice president before he became president. Yeah, he was vice president of academic affairs. And then Dolan Jack Dolan, who was the president.
Yeah.
These are people who had to approve this and say, okay, we'll take it to the Board of Trustees. And they did. So Frank and I and Corliss were among the first people in that very first class that started. It was also Jan Newman. I got a list because I know Jan Newman, Melda Duhon, Betty Marshall, Rita Poto, Bertie Woods, and then there was a guy named Tim. I can't remember his last name.
Adele.
Huh?
Adele.
Right, Tim Adele from California.
Frank.
And those were
Frank Kelly.
and Frank, of course. Frank was the first one who graduated with MFA and fall of 84. Then Frank and Melvin and I got ours in May of 85. So those were people who up at that level, but there were faculties like Bob Cooper, Curtis Nelson, Stella Mazanovich, Cheryl Wheeler, Leo Marcel. Leo was also, he ended up being my thesis chair. He was a poet, beautiful poet, and we all miss him very, very much. He was a vital part of this program. And there were many words, of course, Carol. I can't imagine what Carol went through all this time. I'm sure it was a lot. So in that first couple of years, from 84 or 82 through when I got my master's, my MFA in 85, we had some of the most outstanding writers that you can think of. W.D. Snodgrass, Amy Cleppett, Leon Stokesbury, Richard Wilbur, yeah.
Larry McMurtry actually came.
Larry McMurtry came and worked with us in a workshop. I won't talk about his jeans, which drove me absolutely nuts. Do something with your fly, please. Anyhow, Valerie Martin, James Lee Burke, Richard Yates, Andre DeVuse, Elizabeth Spitzer, and that was just a few. But there were so many great people that came here, and Frank and I had the privilege, and Corliss, we had the privilege of working with these outstanding writers and poets, and they contributed a great deal of their time. Excuse my throat, the allergies are killing me. But anyhow, people like Frank who are willing to say to the community, not just McNeese, but to the community, this program has value. As Michael was saying, the audacity to keep the program going lies in the hands of you and people like Frank. So congratulations to all of you and for the winners and for getting your work and stay with the MFA program.
Thank you so much, Dean. That was wonderful. Someone has to write that history down. So I'm just going to jump in here and introduce Neil Connelly. I've already said he was a student here of EL. Escaped. He thought he escaped. Came back. Saved my life, I think, by coming back. I was his student. And changed the course of history for me too. So I'm going to try not to cry, but I want to ask Neil sometimes. I don't want to make this too much about me, but I want to ask Neil sometimes, what's worse, working with me or working on the school board? He's a school board member, working my writing or the school board, because he's one of those people that is actually brave enough to be on a local school board. During these times when it's the hardest. I think I might win, judging by his look, that school board might be easier than I am. So, but he's kept the spirit of John alive, I think, in this program and in his work. He teaches at Shippensburg University in Pennsylvania. The way he sees everything in fictional terms and story terms is always inspiring to me. When I just sort of see a mess, he can make story out of anything. And I don't know. I'm sort of speechless when it comes here. So if you get a chance, ask him to see his student ID from his first year and his student ID from when he was a VL right after he graduated. It says a lot. It says a lot. But I think if you compare that now, you'll see.
Yeah.
It should be the third picture.
Yeah, the third picture.
And you'll see the third picture tonight. So, and I didn't mention the 7 books.
Yeah, right.
Yes, countless sets.
That's a professional right there. Michael Hart, right? Wonderful people. Thanks, Mike. So much. When I came here, Michael was 3rd year, and he and a guy named Cameron Buss were foundational. And I said at their graduate reading, everything good that happens after this is because of them, right? Like what we're able to keep doing here because of them. Michael wasn't just shy when I came here. Michael was timid. Absolutely. But like I have very clear memories of him being really quiet in class, like silent in workshop. And then I would take the critiques myself and look at them and then give them back to the students. And I cornered him and I was like, dude, like I see you. Like I'm gonna need you to share that in class now. Like I can't do this from where I am. I'm gonna need you to be the guy that says that in class. And I'm very clearly I'll try. And I was like, Michael, you're going to have to look me in the eye at some point, right? Or this isn't gonna work, you know? That's true. Like I didn't know what color your eyes were for a while when I was here. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for setting all this up. I really appreciate it. I've got, quick thanks to give. The dean is here. He was here last time I heard a reading. That means so much to the program. So thank you very much. And I want you to know we accept admin, so you don't need to sit in the back row like that. You have nothing to fear from us. We're pleasant people. Thanks to the students I met with that are here. It's been like putting your finger in an electrical socket again to be back in this place and sit down with them and like, well, that's what that felt like. It's like a jolt to the system, like the defibrillator or something like that. It's crazy good. And thanks, of course, to Frank. Right? Are we this year's Frank Granger poets? Yeah. So I'd like to thank Frank for funding his celebration. That's fair to say. Michael did ask me to say a few words about Frank, and because I'm bad at saying a few words about anything, I wrote them down to keep me from rambling too much. Not everyone knows the true story of how Frank Granger came to Lake Charles. Frank Granger first arrived in Calcasieu Parish in the spring of 1967, just before the Summer of Love. The Trailways bus he was traveling on ran out of gas in the outskirts of town. Dressed in bell-bottom jeans and a tie-dye shirt, he was on his way from New Orleans to Haight-Ashbury. But fate had other plans. And after eating his first Darryl special, Frank decided to put down roots. He got a job shelling crawfish. None of that is true. Born to a coal mining father and a mother who was a Buddhist puppeteer, Frank was raised in the hills of Appalachia. Okay, look, like Michael, I didn't do any research. I have no idea how Frank came to be here. I wouldn't be surprised to hear he's been here since the beginning, an immortal of sorts. Right? But like before Lake Charles, there was Frank. But what I know for sure is I'm damn glad he was here. And everyone associated with the MFA program should rightfully be damn glad too. In an article published in 1985, Frank perfectly encapsulated kind of the heart of our MFA. This is a true direct quote. I wanted to read a bunch of stuff and learn a bunch of stuff, and so I could write a bunch of stuff. Have we ever done? Why is that not in our literature? Right? That's it. Later in the same article, he was quoted as saying, "The object of life is learning, and if you're not learning, you're not living." Yeah. Good words, brother. Right? Really good words. I do understand that an early draft of the article, written by Pam Bro, included a description of Frank being just cute as a button, but the editors pulled that out. How to quantify Frank's impact on the program? Impossible. Right? Like I'm a man with a limited skill set. I have a decent imagination, and I can't imagine it without him. Right? Of course, he was part of that first class, paving the way for future aspiring authors to learn together. And of course, his financial generosity has made possible visits from dozens of staggeringly talented writers over the decades, each of whom shared their gifts with the students, enlightening them and inspiring them. And of course, his enthusiastic presence at parties over the years and his encouragement has buoyed students and provided a continuity of support unmatched at any institution in America. Mm-hmm. He's a fixture, right? A pillar, the sine qua non of this entire endeavor. You like my Latin, Frank? I thought that was a good line. Carol Wood, Grand Matriarch and Earth Goddess of the program, had this reflection on Frank. Frank was already a young Lake Charles lawyer when he met John Wood and became a student in the MFA program. And he must have been one of the program's earliest graduates. At some point, after he had got his degree in poetry, he founded the Frank Granger Poetry Series. The series meant that the program had the funds each year to pay for a visit by a truly prestigious and important poet: Snodgrass, Wilbur, X.J. Kennedy, Zimmer.
And Paul.
I remember sitting on the floor in your house listening to Zimmer, talking about my work, and I just was terrified. It was so good. To visit McNeese, giving a reading, interacting with the public, and significantly reading students' poems and conferring with them. Frank has also been generous to the MFA program in another way, too. That's with his time. A lawyer's time is always expensive, but in Frank's case, that time is costly and valuable in a surprising way. Frank has spent his whole life defending people who could least afford good legal representation. And since he's a human being, his time and energy are not limitless. But in my memory, he was always ready to offer legal advice or maybe even representation before a judge to any of our grad students who might have had trouble in their lives. Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. That's perfect. I can attest to that. Frank was unofficially like on legal retainer for various calls, and what I put down here, this is a good word, entanglements that MFAers may have found themselves in here and there. Writers tend to create drama on the page and in life. I'm always telling my students, you want to lead a life that actually is a boring story. I hate to sound like an old man, but trust me, it's good advice. But when you're young, you don't listen to that at all. But in those stories, Frank was often the role of savior. Personally, he was there for me at one of the lowest episodes of my time here, one of the lowest episodes of my life. And I'll show you the pictures later on, right from here to there. And he gave me really great sage advice and guidance. And he might not even remember that because I know he did it often with people. I know of confidential occasions when he kept folks from fines or from jail time. I know of one grad who was advised to, and I'm quoting from her directly, flee the state. Now, one story I am at liberty to share comes from his dear friend John McClure, who shared the following, which I will read verbatim. A historical note first. The song Dirty White Boy was a hit for the rock group Foreigner in the early 80s. You should know that to appreciate the story. So this is John. There was that one time I ran over that white trash guy on Highway 27. Fiction writers, if you want a good first line, you might know. It was dead black in the middle of the bayou in marshland, and this fool was running up the middle of the highway, chasing his girlfriend, who took his El Camino without asking and went to a bar up the road to meet some other man. So I scraped him off the road and gave the fool a ride to the bar and left. About a week later, the dirty white boy started coming to my apartment, telling me he wouldn't go to the police if I promised to buy him a carton of cigarettes every week. I told Frank about it and gave him the dirty white boy's name. Bing, bang, boom. Never heard from the dirty white boy again. My favorite Frank story does not include Frank, and he may not know it. John Wood called me on August 9th to say, in a single rambling sentence, if I recall, that he and Carol had impulsively purchased a home in Vermont, that he'd spoken to Joe Cash and Bob Hebert. It had been decided I would now be directing the MFA program. It was like one of those moments from the 70s disaster movies when they say, "Can someone fly this plane?" Because somebody got to sit in the seat. We would meet, John and I, to discuss specifics. I was stunned. Later that week, we got together in his office for an orientation to the new position. Entirely forgetting who John was, I expected a binder. File cabinets full of forms, protocol, procedures, right? John strolled in with a single weary red folder. Not the kind with pockets either. The folder was empty. This is a true story. On the back of the folder, though, there were a dozen names, and each of them had a phone extension next to it. And he put it down and he said, "If you need to add a class or find out someone's schedule, call Ruann. If you have in accounting to handle checks for visiting writers, call Jaylene. To handle books, call Lou Ellen." And he had 15 names, all women, right, who were running things on the campus. And that was the keys to the, absolutely, right? And that was the key to the castle. That's what I needed to know. He concluded my orientation in under a minute, grinning and looking very pleased with himself because he could tell I was distraught. Handing me the folder, and he said, "Neil, if you need anything else, call Frank." It was perfect, right? I know that later on Frank's going to say a few words, but I would ask that now you rise up and help me pay this debt and acknowledge the patron saint of our program, Frank Granger. I want you all to know that's as good as I got. Like, it's all downhill from there. Like, I spent time on that. This other stuff is kind of silly. But I do feel an obligation to try and put up something here of value, especially because I'm on stage with Amy. And I'm going to read from the manuscript that I've completed most recently. The title is The Slobber Duffers of Salvation Station. That's slobber with a B and duffers with an F. That is an actual term. You can Google it. Inspired by my ongoing tenure on the Camp Hill School Board. I was elected 3 months before COVID started, and that was a hellstorm I'll never forget. I'm try to be a patient man, but that was a lot. The climax of each meeting was public comment, when citizens are given 5 minutes each to speak their mind on any topic they choose. Any topic. By policy, the board does not respond. So they can look at you and say, "Do you hear me?" And you may not respond. This is our solicitor's advice. Right? Make no response. If they want a response from us, they can just send us an email and they'll get a written response within 48 hours. That's my policy. But you can't talk back to them because then it starts a conversation. And so you just got to, it's a listening session for you, right? But that dynamic is really interesting, and people figure out right away they can't say anything, right? So that's kind of empowering. Because of my training and my nature, I couldn't help but come to see the speakers, many of whom returned monthly, as characters. I wondered about their motivations. The book then is a series of about 100 monologues over the course of a year's worth of school board meetings. Each chapter is a month. And some of the people are in person, some are via Zoom. And you should know that in real life, speakers are required to state their name at the front. Often their address, but that's been challenged in court. And so that's the title of each section here. I was going to read 3, but I didn't want to sell Frank short, so I'm reading 4 of these. So settle in, and then we'll kind of move up a notch to Amy. So, all right. So the first is Earl McGidry. Not going to lie, I'm like a little nervous zooming into an official meeting and all. I guess I got to start with my given name, the ones my parents put in my birth certificate a million years ago, way back before they threw in the towel. That'd be Earl Stanislaus McGidry. But I prefer to be referred to by the name the Dark Lord bestowed upon me, Fangstrong the Illustrious. I'd like the official record to reflect that, okay? The meeting minutes, whatever. I'm in the process of filing court documents to become an emancipated minor, and I am asserting my legal name change pursuant to that action. That's what Eugene's uncle said, I should say. He's like this badass lawyer type who looks to rip a hole and anybody gets in his way. I'm a senior in the high school. I live at 345 South Zachariah Taylor Boulevard with my mother and my new stepmom, Daisy, who pretends I don't exist for the 3.5 days a week I live with them. The other 3.5 days, I'm at my father's new place in Annville, which he shared with his fiancée, Tatiana. Not gonna lie, Tatiana's not half bad. She lets me do my thing, and she's a total hottie of the highest magnitude. For real. Like magna cum hottie. My buddy Eugene didn't get that joke, but he's not taking AP Latin, so whatever. Anyway, I wrote down some stuff so I don't sound all ranty and tempt them to mess with my meds. I'm here to cry BS on the way I'm being treated by the high school principal, Stan McGidry, who, yeah, is coincidentally also my biological dad. I believe he's in attendance there with you all tonight in the no-purpose room. Picking up on his totally questionable judgment from last spring, Stan has again rejected my request to form an after-school club called the Satanist Society. This despite the fact that my updated application meets all the requirements. I emailed a copy to all 5 board members. See for yourself. Somebody, please, explain to me the legal basis on which this revised request is being denied. In that document, you'll see our stated purpose is, quote, to come to a deeper understanding of the unholy power and supremacy of evil. Beneath proposed activities, I wrote down book and film discussion, debate, participation in club sports, as well as fundraising like bake sales. Doesn't that sound wholesome, Big Stan? Wouldn't that make you, totally proud of your son? In his latest rejection just last week, Principal McGidry's denied our request because our recently acquired sponsor is not a full-time faculty member. But this is just one more piece of his BS. My buddy Eugene's uncle, Mr. Granger, he said we should totally sue them. Bringing your attention to page 17 of the Salvation Station Student Handbook, you'll see that clubs must, quote, meet a recognized educational need or enhance socialization, and, quote, require sponsorship by a staff member who will act as a mentor. Mr. Jake Perlmutter, our beloved custodian, has said he'd be down with helping out. Jake's a righteous janitor, always bugging me about which college I should go to. Big Stan, are you now saying he doesn't meet the requirements of a full-time staff member? I also took the trouble of going through some documents from previous board meetings, and will remind you that your own inclusivity initiative says the principals of both schools should, quote, foster new clubs with diverse interests outside or counter to the mainstream majority. Not gonna lie, I gotta think your group of devil worshippers would qualify. I'm insulted by the notion that our only purpose is to challenge the biblical buddies. Approved about this time last year, just around when my folks sat me down to share that had a big talk and decided it was best for everybody if Big Stan moved out. The God Squad, that's what everybody calls it. They met every other Tuesday in the cafeteria throughout last fall and spring. Mrs. Holloway and her little disciples have every right to gather and sing camp songs to Christ or whatever. Likewise, my associates and I should be allowed to serve our dark master, who appeared to me first in a vision after gym class with instructions to form such a group. This would have been like April, right around Easter. We'd just come in from playing murder ball in the parking lot under the watchful eye of Mrs. Killjoy, and we were getting changed in the locker room. Howie Holloway and two of his henchmen appeared suddenly and said they'd seen an outdated anti-bullying video that showed a kid being shoved into a locker, and it, looked like fun. Regrettably, old Howie felt up for the challenge. Confined in that dark space with those creeps taunting me, I was worried about blowing my 4.0 because I had a quiz in AP Calculus in like 2 minutes. Imagine my relief when I heard an adult say, "What's going on here?" But then I realized it was Big Stan. As my father approached, Howie guessed rightly I'd be too shamed to cry out. And instead of being freed, I got to witness him and my dad chat about the opening of spring training, the Pittsburgh Pirates' chances this year. After they walked away, all chummy and best of pals, I heard someone speak to me from the blackness. "Join me," the voice said, "and I will grant you dominion over all who oppose you." Or at least that's what I think I heard. I may have been crying at that point, sniffling, the words could have been garbled, maybe. Now, was this around the time my parents announced that not only was the divorce final, but they'd each be marrying someone else? It was. Turns out those nights I thought they were trying to patch things up. They'd been searching Tinder together, helping each other find new soulmates. That's unholy. But please don't blow me off and see this as some kind of part of a BS need to act out or some delusion cooked up by a kid who's not being academically challenged by a school's sad excuse for a rigorous curriculum. For real, I'm totally interested in exploring the darker paths. Lately, the well-lit paths. They just seem kind of silly. You know what I mean? Because that's how poets feel in between poems. I usually read these long sections as an odd little break. Iris Torres Queen. It's a hyphenated last name. She's at the podium. Iris Torres Queen, 816 Roosevelt Road, apartment C. Good evening. At present, I am a visiting assistant adjunct instructor at Anvil Junior Community College, as well as a composition specialist at the Tri-Valley Technical Training Center over in Fremont. I completed my graduate work in omnicultural studies through Apex Virtual University, and I'm ABD. My thesis is a treatise on the equitable treatment of all peoples in a post-colonial, post-modern, post-capitalist, post-Y2K, post-feminist landscape through the lens of a theoretical heterotopia operating in the absence of all hegemonic institutions. I come before the board and the greater community who elected them with a very simple question: forward or back? After ages in the darkness of ignorance, we're living in an era when society is finally beginning to acknowledge the pain and suffering caused by hateful and odious mascot names. We no longer have to suffer the Cleveland Indians or the Washington R words. No one remembers the bullets, and if people had any sense at all, they'd relegate Raiders and Vikings and Pirates to history's dustbin. Anyone with a scintilla of historical acumen understands that these monikers celebrate and panegyrize cultures predicated on pillaging, slave labor, and misogyny. Let's not even turn our critical eye on the Crusaders. Others may be able to rationalize the justification of archaic and vile value systems, but I am decidedly not one of them. I also categorically condemn glorifying the exploitation of children, which is undeniably the notion we're promulgating every time our athletic teams take the field as the Salvation Station slubbered offers. It is bewildering how many in our community are unfamiliar with the etymology of this term, its intendment and its signification, which I have studied in some detail as an offshoot of my research. The doffers, were young boys employed at the infamous Von Stark textile mills. I need not remind this august body of the legacy of Otto von Stark, once so celebrated an industrialist that he lent his name to this very town at its origin, Starkville. It grew up around his mills in the 1860s, following their antebellum construction. From a historical perspective, Stark is a fascinating figure. He traveled from Germany to America as a follower of Willem Hode, whose vision of the end of the world brought him and his followers to Kansas to await the appointed hour. When the anticipated apocalypse did not arrive, disappointed believers scattered. Some took up other religious causes. Stark adopted two new passions, capitalism and the occult. His wildly successful career as an industrialist was legendary, an American epic. But upon his death at the turn of the century, revelations regarding the depths of his occult activities resulted in universal condemnation and renunciation. Indeed, one might argue he was an early victim of what we now call cancel culture. The company board voted to change its name to Star Textiles, and the city fathers redubbed Starkville Salvation Station. When von Stark's son Victor's suicide is a matter of public record, the notion that he was motivated by learning his father had taken part in ritual sacrifice of children has never been substantiated. Our forebears were wise to cast off the von Stark name, but foolishly they retained his casual cruelty. The Slubberdoffers, typically around 10, but sometimes as young as 5, were tasked with replacing bobbins, cleaning and servicing factory equipment in the mills. The empty husks of some of the star mills still line the Monongahela River outside of town. Some located on the south side have been renovated and converted into mixed-use edifices. These mills, this entire city, was constructed on land atrociously appropriated by the British in 1768 at Fort Bix. Yes, the Iroquois signed over the rights to thousands of acres, but also, yes, the Shawnee and Delaware, who actually lived in some of those regions, were not part of the negotiations. Back to the Doffers. Selected for their diminutive stature and nimbleness, the boys endured unconscionable workplace conditions. Otto von Stark had little regard for their welfare, which may have contributed to subsequent rumors about his occult activities. Turning off the massive machines interrupted the production line, so the children were sent into the whirling gears and spinning teeth, often encouraged by the belt of an overseer. Accidents became so commonplace that the mills hired a full-time physician who executed on-the-spot amputations. Archival materials and correspondence from the era indicate that children referred to one such individual as Dr. Knuckles. Records indicate he also signed a dozen death certificates. Given the totality of this historical record, you will forgive me if I'm not overcome with giddy pride when I see our school mascot, Scrappy the Slupperdoffer, cavort onto the field with raggedy clothes, bandaged hands, and dirty cheeks. Who in their right minds ever thought this was endearing or cute, this relic of a bygone era? Maybe instead of praising the capitalist exploitation of our most vulnerable, we should leverage our name to promote the sort of qualities we'd like to inculcate in our students. Is that too radical for you? Too progressive? What if we were the Salvation Station mediators, or the innovators, or the self-actualizers? What would be the harm if we were the Salvation Station peacemakers, or the healers, or the empathizers? Conversely, this could provide a potent opportunity to stir discussion on what is a pandemic of indifference. Do we possess the moral fiber to help others understand the demeaning and debilitating power of a hateful name? If we can muster our best selves, we could be the Gringos, the Howleys, or the Crackers. My personal favorite, and one with inordinate potential for a visually appealing mascot, is the Salvation Station White Demons. I look forward to hearing your response. All right, third up is Bubba Maxwell, who's on Zoom. Yeah, hey, am I on or what? Okay, lady, I'm not sure I understand 10% of what the hell you were spouting, but I'm 100% sure you're batshit crazy. Look, I played starting linebacker for the high school, 3 years running back in the day. So you best watch yourself. Go Doffers, right? Doffers, do or die. Anyways, what I'm calling in now is like, so what? It's too much to ask you people for a goddamn calendar. I mean, really, with the money from the state and all those federal grants you get and the nonstop freaking fundraisers, it's too much to print a few hundred calendars? Right, crap. I'm Buddy Maxwell. And right now, technically, I live outside the borough. I'm temporarily in one of the apartments over in Fremont by the bridge. But my daughter, Kimmy, is a senior, and her little brother, Everett, is in 3rd grade. The kids, they still live with Donna in our place, right there on Jefferson Street, across from the 7-Eleven. This whole arrangement with me in an apartment is strictly short term. We're figuring a few things out, you know, ironing some wrinkles. Marriage takes work, like anything that matters. I'm zooming in here now because when I stopped by the office there today, on my way home from the shop, the little girlie up front said they didn't have them calendars no more. Told me to lower my voice, and if I had a problem, I could take it up with the school board. So here I am talking to y'all. I'd like to know who among you had the monkey brain call to stop printing calendars and rely on the ones that are virtual. Sweet Christ on a popsicle stick. I missed the world before we had that freaking word. What does that even mean anyway? A virtual calendar. It sounds like it's not real. That's because it's not. You can't touch it. You can't write on it. All the years the kids were growing up, we got the school calendar and put her on the fridge the very same day. Dead center, surrounded by family photos, artwork from Kimmy and Everett when they were little that we'd never thrown away. You know, the cyclone swirls with crayon titles like Mommy and Daddy Dancing. The fridge, I mean, that's the heart of every kitchen, right? And the kitchen, it's the heart of every home. Am I right or am I right? That fridge calendar was the place where we marked down soccer games and drum lessons, orthodontist appointments, scheduled maintenance for the minivan, which I always handled myself down at the shop. Donna, she's still my wife, and we're working on it, like I said. She'd even put little hearts on all the birthdays as soon as Kimmy or Everett brought that calendar home. The same day. A tradition, y'all got me? By the end of the year, barely a block remained empty. Our lives were packed and meaningful. And the purest proof was that calendar. Now some jackhole penny pusher has decided that we should go green, I guess, and paperless and earth-friendly and all that other PC donkey dukes. You've got to throw away the evil ways of the past. What's so wrong with the 20th century? And everybody's so goddamn eager to leave it behind. Can I ask somebody that? Was it the strong economy? The simple respect for the family unit? When did it become a crime for a man to be a man? This is the same kind of crap Donna's friends started feeding her. Them and that Brene Brown. I remember when I first saw it on the calendar, Ladies Book Club. Once a week, once a month, then once a week. And sure, I got suspicious the way she'd come home with a little wine buzz and a funny look on her face. So sure, I tailed her one night up to the mall and found out this book club met at O'Houlihan's, where there was plenty of Cabernet, but not a goddamn book in sight. Did I confront her about it later? Goddamn right I did. I'm a guy who believes in being upfront. And she went right to the weeping and the crying, saying she was glad I knew because this was a chance for us to fix what was wrong in our marriage, which, as it turns out, wasn't so happy as I've been thinking all these years. No, we had issues with communication. We had issues with empathy. We had issues with intimacy. Issues and tissues. That's what I call the therapy sessions we started last spring. Every Wednesday at 2 o'clock with Dr. Sally, who charges you an arm and 2 legs to give your wife a chance to cry about how horrible you are while she's taking notes you're not allowed to see. I bet you $1 she was making her goddamn grocery list. And of course, the garage's lame medical insurance don't cover these lessons. Nope. Those appointments too. They were on the calendar, right there with the root canals. For a long time, we kept them secret. We didn't want to get Kimmy in a tizzy, so we'd write down Mom and Dad coffee date. Later, though, Donna fessed up. Dr. Sally says dishonesty breeds distrust. I guess it's true. There were times in the past when I'd look at the calendar and see one of the kids needed a ride, or there was some parent-teacher conference, and I'd cringe. And I'd wish for a night of nothing. Just get to sit around and watch CSI, drink a beer, soak my feet with Epsom salt after a day of changing other people's oil and balancing tires. Now, in my ratty rent apartment, I sit on a couch that smells like somebody else's cigarette smoke and somebody else's cat piss. And I watch all the TV I want. And over in the crummy kitchenette, I see the fridge humming and empty. No artwork magneted up, sure as hell no calendar. I'm telling y'all, it just ain't right. Please reconsider. That's all I'm asking. Doffers for life, man. Go blue and gold. If you think by clapping there, I'm not going to be the fourth one, you're kidding. Sorry, I indulge myself. At the site here is Sarah Killjoy. Sarah Killjoy, 842 North 7th Street. Hi. Most of you know me as the girls' basketball and lacrosse coach at the high school, where I also teach phys ed along with freshman year health. Your body and you. I'm also involved with a number of other extracurricular activities that take place on weekends or after school, even before school in some cases. I like to keep busy. For example, I'm the archery club advisor. This is the role that brings me here to you tonight. Accidents happen everywhere in life. And it's wishful thinking to hope the field archery club would be an exception. Most of you are aware of the incident that took place in the morning of the 23rd last month, which has been burning up local Facebook pages ever since. Rumors have run rampant. Serious accusations have been made. An internal investigation was conducted, led by Sergeant Delgado. It's my understanding that the Fernbacher family is seeking legal representation, which is their right. I'm here to offer you a first-person account of what happened. Then I'll await whatever judgment comes my way. Because of the sinkhole, this fall we moved morning practice sessions of the archery club to Crooktrack Fields, home to Salvation Station's annual kite festival, and the location of 2 tennis courts and a soccer field. Residential housing borders the area, and most homeowners there have constructed a fence or planted a hedge along their property lines. The first 15 minutes of day one were uneventful, but there came a point in time when the calm dawn was shattered by a series of what I can only describe as shrill, piercing yips coming from one of the backyards. If you are not familiar with archery, concentration and focus are key elements. Outbursts of sound, especially those of an alarming or hostile nature, are, well, let's just say counterproductive. When the barking continued, I went to the residence in question, where I met briefly with Mr. Fernbacher. I would describe the interactions as not entirely productive, as Mr. Fernbacher shared the opinion that we were in fact disrupting his morning coffee with all of our, quote, chatter and arrow thunking. During this exchange, which took place in Mr. Fernbacher's front driveway, I was introduced to Coco, his Affin Chihuahua. DogTimes.com describes the breed as a cross between the Chihuahua and the Affin Pinscher dog breeds. They are petite, sassy, and highly energetic. The accuracy of this description is supported by the teeth marks on my ankles and lower calves. Coco bit me clean through a sweat sock, and I only buy industrial grade due to an issue with my adrenal glands. Clearly, that little pooch suffers from some sort of Napoleon complex. In compliance with district policy, I had on site a first aid kit and went to tend my wound, leaving the matter with Mr. Fernbacher temporarily unresolved. I did not tell the students the dog was some effing Chihuahua, nor did I encourage or suggest retaliation. They were instructed to resume practice as best they could and ignore the barking, which had resumed with renewed vigor. It's at this point in the narrative where facts become somewhat murky and are in dispute, so I will be especially clear. Did the barking continue? Yes, nonstop over the next half hour. Was it accompanied by the blast of what was clearly an accordion? Yes. Did I order a volley of arrows directed at the Fernbacher residence? Don't be ridiculous. Did one of our students approach the Fernbacher property and open the yard gate? Absolutely not. I deny these and similar allegations unequivocally. Okay, listen, I don't know how Coco ended up on the archery range. What's most likely is that dog forced its way under the fence. Given its small stature, it wouldn't need much of an opening. It is true, I may have been distracted by the fear of rabies I had and the throbbing in my leg, which by this point in time was pulsing with a Morse code I interpreted as severe infection imminent. I was genuflecting to better examine the gauze bandage when my attention was drawn by a peculiar sound, or rather the absence of sound. For the first time in an hour, Coco had stopped barking. In the silence, I lifted my head and saw several of our students sprinting downrange. Not among this group was the frozen Seamus Kincaid, who was holding his bow and looking forlornly in my direction. He shouted, "Holy crap, Mrs. Killjoy, I think I just killed that effing chihuahua." Only he didn't say effing, but the other thing, as he was among those who'd misunderstood me earlier. As quickly as I could in my condition, I limped to what was now a huddle of aspiring archers, at the center of which I found Coco, very much alive, but admittedly, in a bit of a pickle. Seamus's arrow had pierced one of her ears. She was now pinned to the ground. She'd lost a little of that sassy attitude, though, I can tell you. Any attempt to extricate her from her predicament was met with understandable agitation and only threatened to make things worse. Fortunately for her, Mr. Fernbacher appeared on the scene, and among a litany of profanities, he retrieved his dog, along with our arrow, I might add. Listen, I'm sorry about what happened. Clearly, the dog was not properly secured, as to this notion that somehow this was a deliberate assault, that an apprentice archer could hit a darting target the size of a rabbit at 50 yards. Well, that's preposterous. You're talking Robin Hood skill level right there. And nobody on our squad has that, I assure you. I'm certain the dog's ear isn't what it used to be. But I find Mr. Fernbacher's claim that she's permanently traumatized and in need of veterinary therapy to be highly suspect. Whatever the case, I think going forward, we're better off taking our chances with that sinkhole. I mean, how much worse could it be? Okay, thank you. You should know, no one in Camp Hill knows of this, the existence of this document. It's a completed manuscript, and I did not send it out for publication until I'd been reelected. And now they're stuck with me. So I really hope it finds a home, just so I can give out copies and be like, "Hey, I was listening." I say that all the time in committee meetings on campus and the school board. I just say two things, people. One, I'm a novelist, and two, I can hear you. I didn't sign any NDA at all. Okay? All I got to do is say it's fiction, and poof. It is my great pleasure now to share an audience with Amy Fleury, my friend and fellow traveler. We were students here, and later taught together here, and I've seen together Fire and Rain, Signs and Wonders, many. Teaching these days at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, her books include Sympathetic Magic, Reliquaries of Lesser Saints, and Beautiful Troubles, two of which I see are for sale out here. Her poems are widely published in top shelf venues. In my Intro to Creative Writing class on the Amy Fleury Day, which is truly always a highlight of the semester. The poems from just that day, I looked and they were published in All Poetry, in Valparaiso Poetry Review, in Crazy Horse, in Pen Review, in 32 Poems, in Image, and in the LA Times. Wow. Yeah, right. So like, take a second and like breathe on that. Like, and that's just like what I teach that day. I didn't dig deep. I teach Amy's work because it manifests all the qualities that make poetry poetry. Right? I said earlier today, every teacher just wants to say a few things and then go through a series of I told you so's. So when you teach poetry, you're like, poetry should do this and do this and do this. And then you bring out these poems and you go, see, I told you so. See, I told you so. See, that's it right there, right? But I also teach her work because it's what makes art, which eludes satisfactory articulation. Okay. And that's something that has to be experienced. That's why I had only one demand from Michael when he asked me to come here. I said, Mike, I can't go behind it. I can't follow her. I won't do it. I've got to go first. Right? I have to precede her. I'm barely qualified to open for this lady, and I certainly never follow her. My mother's rosary is on a chain around my neck, and so every now and then I find myself doing that. I'm not touching my heart, to my mother's rosary, right? Which means those are my words. You MFA students that I've had the pleasure of talking with, everything I said to you, I hope was important, right? But the best advice I have is be like Amy. Her work is bold and fearless. It's graceful, but powerful. It's quiet, but kind of monumental. All a lot like her. It's devastating and it's lovely. My dear, 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 dear friend, Amy Fleury.
I want to start out by also reiterating what folks have said about Frank. I just want to thank Frank so much. Neil had some individual stories about Frank, but how he helped individuals, but Frank has affected our collective for decades. There have been many hard, lean years in the program after Michael talked about the audacious beginnings. And I know after directing the program for 12 years, I know how hard it was, even after the inception of the program, for John to keep it together, for all the faculty to keep it together, the previous directors to keep it together, the department chairs, the faculty. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that are really challenging. And as I said, we've had a lot of lean, hard years where we were trying to keep things together, but I'm not understating this, or overstating this, I should say. I'm not overstating this, that the fact that we had Frank's endowment kept us going for more than anybody will ever understand. And, you know, McNeese has very small faculty, and it's one of the benefits of having the reading series that we have had all these years is that because we have this small faculty, we're able to bring in writers of great quality who can come and read, obviously, but also to conference with students and give them some additional feedback, give them another voice, another perspective, and help round out their education. And that has been so, so important. Over the years, we've had visiting writers who have written letters of recommendation for our students. They have supported students' participation in writing conferences. They have supported their publications. They have done so much, and none of that would have been possible without Frank's endowment to our reading series, and bringing these people in. And you know, I just can't thank Frank enough for giving back to the program and supporting this thing that we all do and that we all care about so much. And he is really a patron saint for us. And so, again, I just want to reiterate what everybody else has already said about Frank. You've kept us going, so I'm grateful. I also want to take a minute to thank Michael Horner for setting everything up and inviting us and keeping us all in line and having us here tonight. Also, I'd like to thank Michael Robbins for having me in his poetry writing class yesterday, which was an honor and a treat. I want to thank Kevin and Keegan and Wendy and Rita and all of my colleagues over the years here at McNeese. I count myself fortunate to have had such great colleagues and friends. And I always think about talking about talking about Paul Zimmer, thinking about that line, "I have never had such friends again," which is the last line of the beautiful Ethiopian Navy. And whenever I think about that line, I think about McNeese. Never have I had such friends again. And I feel that way about my colleagues, my peers when I was a student here, and also my students. So, in addition to thanking all those folks, I want to thank Neil and Chris Lowe for being great partners as my fiction counterpart when I was here for 14 years. Grateful for that so much. I want to thank all of my students who make all of this absolutely worthwhile, every bit of it. I've learned more from you than I've taught, and it's been such a pleasure and an honor. And also, I just want to thank my mentors and my teachers, many of whom are in the room today. Carol is here, Bob Cooper, Cheryl Ware, so many people here, hopefully also some people joining us, but mentors and teachers. One of the things after having taught for 30 years, I realized that my teachers reside in me and they connect back to my students, and those students then, I have former students in here who are teachers and they are connecting. And I think, the conduit of John Wood. It's like it's going still. So anyway, I want to thank Carol, and I'd also love to dedicate my reading tonight to my mentor, John Wood. So I'm going to read only new poems or newish poems tonight from a manuscript that I have in progress called Stardust and Luck. And I know that many of you know, maybe not everyone, but many of you know that my husband, Derek, and I had a little itty bitty baby about 11 years ago. He was born prematurely with an abdominal wall birth defect, and he was born at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas. And he lived for the entirety of his 2.5 years in this hospital. And it was a challenge and it was a joy. And we learned so much from him. And I'm finally, after a few years, able to get to the business of writing these poems, which are so important to honor his life. And so that's just a little bit of background about what I'll be reading from today or tonight. What I'm going to start with is a poem that comes from towards the beginning of the manuscript. And it's where the title of the poem or the collection comes from, which is Stardust and Luck. And the poem is called A Body Begins. Of stardust and luck, a body is made. First, the ovaries bingo bin churns out its egg, which waits for the urge of sperm to meet it. When the two fuse, a soul makes its way through, and then begins the and. Cell constellation miracles forth a being, a body of matter, of coincidence, a matter of sequence. Already light lattices tissues, seeking the lacuna of bones. What are the chances this nimbus will survive its becoming? What are the odds this body arrives? It's a cosmic lottery, a blood gamble, and each body will claim its own space and favor its own singular name. Okay, this next poem is called Spell Work for a Preemie. It's kind of inspired by fairy tales. Spell Work for a Preemie. Little one, June due, but March born, nestle now in this quilt-draped isolette, kept warm and humid as a womb. While your lavender lids are still sealed and your temples downy with